I don't know what drifted out of the air conditioning that morning, until I smelled sandalwood and saw our CEO walk into the meeting room with a barefoot woman wearing quartz crystals, telling us to meditate instead of debugging system errors. For 14 years, I built the core platform that helped our company reach a valuation of $65 million. Yet I was replaced by an energy consultant who, 1 week later, requested renaming our AI system to the Moonflow Protocol. My name is Maya Reynolds. I'm 38 years old, and until recently, I was the chief systems engineer at Cortava Logic, a tech company based in Denver, Colorado. I'd spent over a third of my life developing Helix, our AI framework that coordinated nearly 90% of our company's operational functions and data. Helix was my creation, my legacy, the culmination of countless sleepless nights and 14 years of relentless refinement. It wasn't just a system, it was the nervous system of Cortava Logic, processing millions of data points per second, predicting market shifts, and optimizing operations with a precision that had made us a quiet powerhouse in the industry. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., beating most of the staff as usual, and headed straight to the coffee machine. The office was that peculiar kind of quiet that allows you to hear the subtle hum of servers and the occasional ping of an early email. I liked those moments, just me and the systems, before the chaos of the day began. As I settled at my desk, I noticed an unusual calendar invitation from Gavin Rowe, our CEO. Emergency Technical Alignment Session. All engineers required. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., which was odd. Gavin rarely involved himself in technical meetings, preferring to leave that to the CTOs, James, and myself. Even stranger, James hadn't mentioned anything about this when we'd spoken the previous evening about the quarterly update we were preparing to roll out. I messaged James, "What's with Gavin's emergency meeting?" His response came quickly. "No idea. He just told me to be there. Said he's bringing in a consultant who can help with our alignment issues." We didn't have alignment issues. Helix was running at 99.8% efficiency, and the few bugs we were addressing in the upcoming update were minor. I felt a subtle unease building but dismissed it as morning paranoia fueled by too much caffeine. At precisely 9 a.m., I walked into the glass-walled conference room we called the Fishbowl. Most of the engineering team was already there, 23 people looking equally confused. James stood by the whiteboard, his usual confident stance replaced by something that looked suspiciously like nervousness. That's when I noticed the smell. Sandalwood, heavy, cloying, definitely not part of our office's usual bouquet of coffee and the faint ozone scent of electronics. Then Gavin walked in, followed by a woman I'd never seen before. She appeared to be in her mid-40s, with long silver-streaked hair flowing freely down her back. She wore a flowing linen dress in some indeterminate shade between beige and gray, multiple crystal necklaces that clinked softly as she moved, and, most notably, no shoes. Her toenails were painted a deep purple. "Good morning, team," Gavin announced with an enthusiasm that seemed forced even for him. "I'd like you all to meet Celine Maru. She's an organizational energy harmonizer who's going to help us unlock our next level of creative flow." The room fell silent. I caught the eye of Raj, our senior back-end developer, who raised an eyebrow so high it nearly disappeared into his hairline. "Namaste," Celine said, pressing her palms together and bowing slightly. "I'm honored to merge with your energy field today." For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Maybe the coffee machine had been spiked. Maybe this was an elaborate prank. But Gavin's face showed nothing but earnest admiration as he gestured for Celine to take the floor. "Before we begin," she announced, pulling out what appeared to be a bundle of dried herbs from a velvet pouch, "I need to cleanse this space. The electromagnetic frequencies in tech environments can be quite disruptive to our intuitive centers." She proceeded to light the herb bundle, which I now recognized as sage, and waft the smoke around the perimeter of our conference room. Our state-of-the-art smoke detectors remained mercifully silent. Someone must have disabled them in advance. I leaned toward James and whispered, "What the hell is this?" "Just go with it," he muttered back, Gavin met her at some CEO retreat in Sedona. He's impressed with her insights. Celine finished her smudging ritual and placed a series of crystals on the conference table, arranging them in what I assumed was some significant pattern. Now, instead of diving into your code problems, she said the word code as if it were a regrettable affliction. Let's all take a moment to center ourselves and align our collective energy. I watched in disbelief as she instructed 24 highly trained engineers, people with advanced degrees in computer science, mathematics, and artificial intelligence, to close their eyes and breathe deeply while she chanted something about opening the crown chakra to receive digital wisdom. My immediate instinct was to walk out. This was clearly a waste of time, and we had actual work to do. We were in the final stages of debugging a critical update that would improve Helix's predictive capabilities by an estimated 12%. But Gavin was watching the room intently, noting who was participating with enthusiasm, who was reluctantly going along, and, I was certain, who wasn't buying into this at all. Office politics dictated I at least pretend to participate. So I closed my eyes but kept my mind focused on the actual problems we needed to solve. After what felt like an eternity but was probably 15 minutes, Celine's chanting stopped. Now that we're aligned, she said, I can share why I'm here. Your CEO has brought me in because he senses that your company's energy has become stagnant. Your technological systems, while impressive on a material plane, lack spiritual flow. I've been tasked with harmonizing your digital infrastructure with the natural rhythms of the universe. I couldn't help myself. Excuse me, I interrupted, but what exactly does that mean in practical terms? Celine turned to me, her expression serene but her eyes sharp. You must be Maya, she said, though I hadn't introduced myself. Gavin told me about you, the creator of Helix, is it? I nodded, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. Your system is impressive from a technical standpoint, she continued, but it's rigidly aligned with masculine energy principles, control, domination, linear thinking. What it lacks is the feminine principle of intuitive flow, of organic connection to the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. I heard a snicker from somewhere in the room, quickly stifled. And how exactly do you propose to add feminine energy to an AI system? I asked, struggling to keep my tone neutral. That's why I'm here, she smiled. Over the next few weeks, I'll be working closely with all of you to understand your system and infuse it with more balanced energetic principles. Gavin has given me full access to observe and advise. At this, I couldn't maintain my composure. Full access to Helix without any security clearance or technical training. Gavin stepped forward, his expression hardening slightly. Celine has signed all the necessary NDAs, Maya, and yes, she'll have observation-level access to understand how our systems work. I've personally authorized it. The implication was clear. This wasn't up for debate. I looked to James for support, but he was suddenly very interested in his tablet, avoiding my gaze. Now, Celine continued as if there had been no interruption. I'd like each of you to draw a card from this deck. It will help me understand your individual energy signatures and how they interact with your digital creations. She produced a tarot deck and began moving around the table. As engineers reluctantly drew cards, she provided interpretations that were vague enough to seem profound if you were inclined to believe such things. When she reached me, I hesitated before drawing a card. The Hermit, she announced, studying my card. Interesting. You seek truth in isolation. Maya. You believe wisdom comes from shutting out the world rather than embracing it. This is reflected in your coding style, secure, enclosed, resistant to outside influence. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. But true innovation requires openness. Your energy signature is rigid. It's holding back the entire company. I felt a flash of anger but maintained my professional demeanor. With respect, Ms. Maru, my rigid coding principles have built a system that secured this company millions in revenue and maintained a reliability record well above industry standards. Numbers. She dismissed with a wave of her hand. The material realm's limited way of measuring success. I'm talking about potential. about what could be if you allowed more flow. The meeting continued in this vein for another excruciating hour. By the end, Celine had announced that she would be conducting individual energy assessments with key team members, starting with the leadership. She also requested that we postpone our scheduled system update until she could ensure it was aligned with favorable astral conditions. As the team filed out, visibly confused, but mostly amused by what they assumed was a temporary corporate indulgence, Gavin pulled me aside. "I need you to work with Celine. Maya? She's going to help us take Cortava to the next level." "Gavin," I said carefully, "I understand bringing in new perspectives, but we're a tech company, not a spiritual retreat. Delaying our update based on astral conditions could put us behind competitors." His expression changed, a coolness entering his usually friendly eyes. "Maya, I've built this company by knowing when to listen to the right advisors. Celine has helped other tech firms achieve remarkable breakthroughs by aligning their technology with natural energetic principles. Just keep an open mind." I wanted to argue further, but recognized the futility. In 14 years at Cortava, I'd seen Gavin go through phases of enthusiasm for various management philosophies and wellness trends. Usually, they passed quickly once the next shiny idea came along. I decided the best approach was to humor this new fixation while keeping the actual work on track. "Of course," I said, "I'm always open to new ideas." It was the first time I'd ever lied to Gavin. The next morning, I arrived to find Celine sitting cross-legged on the floor of my office, eyes closed, apparently meditating in my space without permission. Several crystals had been placed on my desk, including one directly on top of my keyboard. "Excuse me," I said, standing in the doorway. "Can I help you with something?" Her eyes opened slowly. "Maya, good morning. I'm just harmonizing your workspace. The energy here is very dominated by binary thinking. It needs softening." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate your effort, but I have calls starting in 15 minutes. Could we reschedule this harmonizing?" "Of course," she said, rising gracefully to her feet. "Actually, this is perfect timing. Gavin asked me to conduct your energy assessment this morning. Shall we say 10 a.m. in the meditation room?" "The meditation room?" We didn't have a meditation room. "Yes, the small conference room on the east side. I've repurposed it for energy work during my time here. It gets the morning light." That was conference room C, which we regularly used for small team meetings and calls. "I have a project review at 10, I said. "I've already spoken with your team. They're aware the meeting has been moved to accommodate our session." Her smile remained perfectly serene, but I felt the power play clearly. She was rearranging my schedule without consulting me. "Fine, 10 a.m. After she left, I removed the crystals from my desk and placed them on the small side table near the door. Whatever game was being played, I needed to understand the rules before I could respond effectively. At 10 a.m., I reluctantly made my way to conference room C, now the meditation room. The blinds had been drawn, the lights dimmed, and the table pushed against the wall. Floor cushions were arranged in a circle, and the unmistakable scent of sandalwood hung in the air. Celine sat on one of the cushions, eyes closed, apparently in deep meditation. I cleared my throat to announce my presence, and her eyes opened immediately, as if she hadn't been meditating at all. "Maya, welcome to this sacred space. Please, sit." She gestured to the cushion opposite her. I sat awkwardly, unused to conducting business meetings on the floor. "So, what does this energy assessment involve?" "First, we'll need to open your energy channels. Your aura is quite constricted, typical of people who spend too much time with technology and not enough time in nature." What followed was 45 minutes of what I can only describe as New Age psychotherapy. Celine asked probing questions about my childhood, my relationships, my connection to the divine feminine, all while having me hold various crystals and occasionally wafting more burning herbs around me. I answered minimally, keeping personal details vague. This woman had no right to my private life, regardless of whatever authority Gavin had granted her. "You're resisting the process." Maya, she said eventually, fixing me with a penetrating stare. Your energy refuses to flow. This is exactly the problem with your creation. With Helix, it's an extension of your blocked crown chakra. Helix is an artificial intelligence system, I replied evenly. It doesn't have chakras. Everything has energy, she countered. Your AI system is an energy pattern you've created, and it reflects your own imbalances. Too much structure, not enough intuition. Too much security, not enough trust. Too much masculine force, not enough feminine receptivity. I struggled to maintain my professional demeanor. With respect, Ms. Maru. Celine, please. Celine. Helix is designed with specific parameters because it handles sensitive data and critical operations. Its structure isn't about gender energy, it's about functionality and security. She shook her head sadly. This is why Gavin brought me in. Your perspective is limited by your training. You can't see beyond the material framework you've been conditioned to accept. But Gavin understands that to achieve truly revolutionary technology, we must transcend these limitations. The conversation continued in this circular pattern until our time was mercifully up. As I rose to leave, Celine handed me a small purple crystal. Keep this with you when you work on your code. It will help open your third eye to new possibilities. I pocketed the crystal to avoid an argument and left without comment. Over the next week, Celine's presence became increasingly disruptive. She conducted similar assessments with other team members, installed small water fountains throughout the office to improve energy flow, and held mandatory alignment sessions that took engineers away from actual work. Most of the team treated it as an amusing distraction, but I began to notice subtle shifts in the company dynamics. Those who enthusiastically embraced Celine's methods received positive attention from Gavin, while skeptics found themselves increasingly marginalized. More concerning, Celine began attending technical meetings, despite having no background in technology. She would interrupt technical discussions with comments about energy blockages and suggest solutions like renaming variables to more harmonious terms or restructuring code based on sacred geometry principles. The situation reached a new level of absurdity when she suggested we rename our AI system from Helix to the Moonflow Protocol. Because helixes have a masculine spiral energy, while the moon governs the feminine intuitive cycles. I approached James after this particular meeting, hoping to find an ally in maintaining some semblance of rationality. This has gone far enough, I said. We need to talk to Gavin before she does actual damage to our systems. James looked uncomfortable. Look, Maya, I get it. It's unconventional. But Gavin's really bought into this, and fighting it directly won't do anyone any good. So we just let her reshape our entire technical infrastructure based on moon cycles and crystal energies? Of course not, he said, lowering his voice. Just humor her in meetings. Make small cosmetic changes that don't affect functionality. She'll move on to another company eventually. And in the meantime, we waste hours of productive time on energy assessments and alignment sessions? James sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. Sometimes playing the political game is part of the job. You know that, Maya. I did know that, but this felt different from the usual corporate fads. Something about the way Gavin deferred to Celine, the increasing frequency with which my expertise was being questioned, set off alarm bells I couldn't ignore. My concerns escalated when I discovered that Celine's access to our systems had been upgraded from observation level to admin access. I immediately went to Gavin's office, bypassing his assistant's attempt to schedule an appointment. Gavin, why does Celine have admin access to Helix? I demanded without preamble. He looked up from his desk, momentarily startled by my entrance before his expression settled into something carefully neutral. She needs to understand the system thoroughly to make her recommendations. Maya, understanding doesn't require admin rights. She could crash the entire system or compromise data security. She has no technical training whatsoever. Gavin leaned back in his chair. Maya, I understand your concerns, but Celine has a unique perspective that transcends conventional technical training. She's helped other companies achieve breakthroughs precisely because she isn't limited by traditional thinking. What companies? I challenged. Name one specific technological breakthrough she's facilitated. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Her client list is confidential, as you well know, but I've spoken with other CEOs who vouch for her methods. This isn't about methods or perspectives, I insisted. It's about basic security protocols. No one should have admin access without proper training and clearance, regardless of what insights they might offer. I've made my decision, Gavin said firmly. And frankly, Maya, your resistance to this process is becoming problematic. Celine mentioned that your energy signature is particularly recalcitrant. I'd hoped you would be more open to growth opportunities. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. In 14 years, through countless projects and challenges, Gavin had never spoken to me this way. He had always valued my expertise, sought my input on technical decisions. Now he was questioning my professional judgment based on my energy signature. This isn't about my energy, I said finally. This is about protecting the system I've spent 14 years building, the system that forms the backbone of this entire company. Perhaps that's the problem, he replied, his tone softening to something that sounded disturbingly like pity. You've been too close to Helix for too long. You see it as your creation rather than the company's asset. Maybe you need to detach a bit, gain some perspective. I left his office with a growing sense of dread. This wasn't just a temporary corporate indulgence, something fundamental had shifted. And for the first time in my career at Cortava Logic, I felt genuinely unsafe. The following days confirmed my fears. Celine began making actual changes to Helix's interface, replacing our streamlined, efficient design with what she called a more intuitive, feminine approach, essentially adding unnecessary visual elements and complicating workflows that had been carefully optimized over years. When I raised objections in meetings, citing empirical evidence about user experience and efficiency metrics, I was told I was being resistant to evolution and trapped in linear thinking patterns. Worse, I noticed other engineers becoming increasingly reluctant to support my position publicly, though many expressed agreement in private. The atmosphere had become one where questioning Celine's methods could brand you as energetically misaligned, a new form of political liability. Then came the decision that should have been impossible. Our quarterly update, critical bug fixes and performance improvements that clients were waiting for, was officially postponed because according to Celine, Mercury retrograde is an inauspicious time for deploying digital transformations. When I presented data showing that delaying would cost us approximately $280,000 in efficiency losses and potentially violate service-level agreements with key clients, Gavin dismissed my concerns. Some things are more important than quarterly numbers. Maya, we're playing a longer game here. That evening, as I worked late trying to mitigate the damage from the delay, a junior engineer named Zoe approached my desk. She glanced around nervously before placing a folded note in front of me, then quickly walked away without a word. The note was brief. They're planning to edge you out, get ready. Meeting tomorrow. 10 a.m., Gavin's office. I sat back, the confirmation of my fears hitting me physically. Despite everything, some part of me had hoped I was overreacting, that this bizarre situation would resolve itself before reaching this point. I had given 14 years to this company. I had built the system that made it valuable. Surely that counted for something. But another part of me had been preparing for this possibility. That night, I stayed at the office until everyone had left. Then I initiated a series of security protocols I had built into Helix years ago, fail-safes designed for catastrophic scenarios that I had never imagined would actually be needed. I created a secure backup of the entire system, not on company servers, but on encrypted external storage that only I could access. This wasn't theft, it was protection. I wasn't taking Helix away, I was ensuring that if something went wrong, there would be a way to restore it. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, armor for the battle ahead. At precisely 10 a.m., I knocked on Gavin's office door. Inside, I found Gavin, Celine, and surprisingly, a woman from HR whom I recognized but had rarely interacted with. No, James. His absence spoke volumes. Maya, please sit down, Gavin said, gesturing to the chair facing his desk. The setup was clear, them versus me. I'll stand, thanks, I replied, determined not to be literally talked down to. Gavin exchanged a glance with Celine, who nodded slightly as if confirming something. It was clear who was actually running this meeting. Maya, he began. We've asked you here because we need to discuss your role at Cortava moving forward. You mean my termination? I said flatly. He flinched slightly at my directness. Not termination, transition. Your technical skills are valuable, but your energy alignment with our new direction is creating disharmony in the company flow. In plain English, please, I said. The HR woman stepped in. Ms. Reynolds, what Mr. Rowe is trying to express is that your position as Chief Systems Engineer is being restructured. We're creating a new role, Technological Integration Specialist, which would utilize your technical knowledge in a more advisory capacity, while day-to-day system management would shift to a new leadership team more aligned with the company's evolving vision. A demotion, wrapped in corporate euphemism. And I had no doubt who would be part of this new leadership team. And if I'm not interested in this restructured role, I asked. Then we would discuss separation terms, she replied smoothly. The company is prepared to offer a generous severance package in recognition of your years of service. I looked at Gavin, searching for any sign of the man who had once valued my contributions enough to make me his third hire when Cortava was just a startup operating out of a converted warehouse. 14 years, Gavin, I built Helix from nothing. It's the reason this company is worth anything at all. No one is denying your contributions, Maya, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. But companies evolve. Sometimes the visionaries who build the foundation aren't the right people to lead the next phase of growth. And you believe a self-proclaimed energy consultant with zero technical training is better equipped to lead a technology company's core systems than the engineer who built them. Celine spoke for the first time. Your attachment to hierarchies of knowledge is exactly the limitation we're trying to transcend. Maya, true innovation comes from intuitive wisdom, not just technical expertise. I turned to her, no longer bothering to hide my contempt. And what exactly is your technical background, Celine? Which programming languages are you proficient in? What systems have you built? What companies have actually implemented your intuitive wisdom in their technology with measurable results? My work transcends conventional metrics, she replied serenely. I've guided multiple Fortune 500 companies through energetic transformations that open channels for breakthrough innovation. Names, I demanded. Specific companies, specific innovations. As I've explained to Gavin, my client relationships are bound by confidentiality. Of course they were, because they likely didn't exist. I turned back to Gavin. You're making a catastrophic mistake. Helix isn't just code. It's a complex ecosystem that requires deep institutional knowledge to maintain and evolve. Without proper management, you risk system failures that could cripple operations. Celine has assembled a transition team, he replied. With your cooperation, we can ensure a smooth handover. And there it was. The decision had already been made. This meeting wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. I see, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, despite the rage and betrayal churning inside me. Then I'll make this simple. I'm not interested in a demotion disguised as a restructuring. I'll take the severance package. The HR woman looked relieved at my apparent cooperation. She slid a folder across the desk. These are the terms we're offering. You'll find them quite generous. We'll need you to sign the enclosed non-disclosure and non-compete agreements. I didn't touch the folder. I'll have my lawyer review them first. Of course, she nodded. In the meantime, we'll need you to surrender your company devices and access credentials. Joshua from IT will assist you in clearing out your office. So that was it. 14 years ended in a 15-minute meeting. No acknowledgement of my contributions. No real explanation beyond vague references to energy alignment and evolving vision. I have one question before I go, I said, looking directly at Gavin. Was any of this actually about my performance, or was it just about making room for your new advisor? A flash of discomfort crossed his face, quickly masked. This isn't personal, Maya. It's about the company's future. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Good luck with the moonflow, Gavin. You're going to need it. The process of being escorted out of the building I had helped design was surreal. Joshua, a junior IT specialist who had always been friendly, now avoided eye contact as he watched me pack my personal items and surrender my company laptop and phone. He reset my passwords while I stood there, officially cutting me off from the systems I had built. I'm sorry about this, Maya, he whispered when the HR representative stepped out momentarily. Everyone thinks it's bullshit. I gave him a small smile. It's not your fault. Take care of yourself, Joshua. As I walked to my car, carrying a single box of personal items from 14 years of work, I felt strangely calm. The shock would wear off soon, I knew. But for now, this emotional numbness was useful. It allowed me to think clearly about what came next. I drove home to my downtown apartment, set the box down in my living room, and went straight to my home office. There, in the bottom drawer of my desk, was an old laptop I rarely used anymore, my personal machine from the early days of Cortava Logic. Before we had standardized company equipment, I powered it up, entered a series of passwords, and accessed a hidden partition. There, preserved like a technological time capsule, was the original architecture of Helix, the blueprint I had created before it became the company's central nervous system. But more importantly, the laptop contained access keys to a series of secure protocols I had built into Helix years ago, what I called the continuity measures. These weren't malicious backdoors. They were legitimate security features designed to protect the system in case of catastrophic failure or compromise. I had documented them fully, but in the technical specifications that only the most senior engineers would ever read. Certainly not something Celine would understand or Gavin would bother with. One of these protocols was particularly relevant now, the ability to trigger a secure system migration. If activated, it would transfer Helix's core functionality and essential data to a secure, independent server I'd set up years ago through a shell company, ostensibly for testing purposes, but really as a last resort safeguard. The migration wouldn't destroy Helix or the company's data. It would simply move the most critical components and datasets to a secure location, leaving behind a functional but significantly diminished version of the system. To anyone without intimate knowledge of Helix's architecture, it would appear as though the system was experiencing cascading efficiency failures, nothing catastrophic, just a system performing well below its capabilities. My finger hovered over the key that would initiate this protocol. Was I really considering this? It wasn't illegal. I had built these safeguards with the company's knowledge, even if few understood their full implications. It wasn't theft. I wasn't taking anything that wouldn't remain accessible to Cortava Logic. It was more like making a copy of my life's work before it was handed over to someone who would destroy it through ignorance. I thought of Gavin's dismissive attitude, of Celine's smug certainty, of 14 years ended with a manila folder and a 15-minute meeting. I thought of Helix, elegant, powerful, efficient, being dismantled and reconfigured according to moon cycles and energy flows. I pressed the key. The screen filled with command lines executing in rapid succession. A progress bar appeared. Initiating Continuity Protocol Alpha. 6 seconds later, it was complete. Somewhere in the Cortava Logic building, Helix was still running, but its soul, the advanced algorithms that made it truly exceptional, the refined datasets that gave it unparalleled predictive capabilities, had been silently, invisibly transferred to my secure server. What remained would function, but at a fraction of its true capacity. I closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of whiskey. Tomorrow. I would call my lawyer about the severance package. Tomorrow. I would begin to process the anger and betrayal. But tonight, I had ensured that my life's work wouldn't be destroyed by a CEO's midlife crisis and a psychic advisor's delusions. The effects weren't immediately apparent. For the first few days after my departure, Cortava Logic continued operating normally, or at least, that's what I gathered from former colleagues who reached out with sympathetic messages. Many were shocked by my sudden exit, especially those who had worked closely with me and understood my value to the company. James finally called me a week after my termination. "Maya, I'm sorry," he began without preamble. "I should have warned you, should have fought harder." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, not making it easy for him. "Why didn't you?" He sighed heavily. "Politics, self-preservation, all the usual excuses. Gavin's completely under her spell, and anyone who questions her finds themselves sidelined. I have a mortgage, kids in college." "I understand," I said, and part of me did. Office politics could be brutal, and not everyone had the financial cushion to risk their position on principle. "How are things going there?" "Honestly, not great. There have been some performance issues with Helix since you left. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to notice. Response times are slower. Predictive accuracy is down about 30%. The team is scrambling to figure out why." I made a non-committal noise. Growing pains, new leadership, new direction. "Maya," his voice lowered, "did you do something to the system before you left?" "I followed all proper protocols for transitioning out of the company," I replied carefully. "I surrendered all company equipment and access credentials as requested." There was a pause as he processed my non-answer. "Right. Well, Solene is telling everyone that the system is recalibrating its energetic field and that temporary disruption is part of the transformation process. She's conducted 3 healing ceremonies in the server room already." "Despite everything," I laughed, "I'm sure that will fix the problem." She's also pushing forward with renaming it to the Moonflow Protocol. Brand new UI being designed with sacred geometry principles. Very circular, very inefficient. I winced at the thought of my streamlined interface being replaced with new age geometrical patterns. "And Gavin?" "Still all in, but the board is starting to ask questions. The performance issues are affecting client deliverables. Nothing serious yet, but if it continues..." We talked a while longer, James filling me in on other company gossip before we said our goodbyes. I felt no satisfaction in hearing about the system's declining performance. It had never been my intention to harm the company or my former colleagues. But I also felt no regret about protecting Helix from being completely ruined by incompetent management. Over the next few weeks, I focused on regrouping. My lawyer negotiated a better severance package than initially offered, though I had to fight hard against the non-compete clause they tried to include. Eventually, we settled on a 6-month non-compete limited to direct competitors in our specific market segment. Reasonable enough. And it came with financial compensation for the restriction period. Meanwhile, I began accessing my secure server, reconnecting with the migrated version of Helix. It was strange working with it outside the corporate environment, like meeting an old friend in an unfamiliar setting. I spent hours refining and enhancing the system, free from corporate constraints and quarterly deadlines, without the pressure to maintain backward compatibility with legacy systems or accommodate other departments' requirements. I could implement improvements I'd been contemplating for years. 3 weeks after my departure, I received an unexpected call from Ryan Chen, CTO of Meridian Systems, one of Cortava Logic's largest clients. I'd worked with Ryan on several projects and respected his technical acumen. "Maya," he said when I answered, "I hope I'm not overstepping by calling you directly." "Not at all," I assured him. "What can I do for you, Ryan?" There was a pause before he continued. "I'm calling about some concerning developments with Cortava. We've been experiencing significant issues with the Helix-powered systems we use. Response times have doubled. Predictive accuracy has plummeted. And last week, we had a complete outage that cost us nearly $500,000 in lost productivity." I made a sympathetic noise but didn't interrupt. "When we contacted Cortava about these issues, We were told the system was undergoing an energetic transformation and that the disruptions were temporary. Then someone named Celine invited us to participate in a digital cleansing ceremony to align our usage patterns with the system's new, I believe the term was moon flow paradigm. Despite the seriousness of the situation, I had to stifle a laugh. That sounds challenging, I said diplomatically. Maya, we've invested millions in Cortava's technology. We can't afford to have critical systems subject to whatever this is. I know you've left the company, and I don't want to put you in an awkward position. But I need to understand what's happening. Is this fixable, or should we be looking at other options? I chose my words carefully. Ryan, I can't discuss the specifics of Cortava's current situation due to my separation agreement, but I can tell you that the issues you're experiencing aren't coincidental. There have been significant changes in leadership and direction. That much is clear, he said dryly. Look, I'll be blunt. We're considering terminating our contract with Cortava, but before we do that, I wanted to check if you've landed somewhere new. If there's a company that has your expertise behind their systems, we'd be interested in talking. This was the opening I hadn't realized I was waiting for. Actually, Ryan, I've been working on something new. It's early stages, but I'd be happy to discuss it with you. I'd like that, he said, the relief evident in his voice. How about lunch tomorrow? That night, I worked until dawn, preparing a demonstration of what my enhanced version of Helix could do. I didn't call it Helix. Of course, legally, I couldn't. But the core architecture, the principles that made it exceptional, those were mine to repurpose. I named this new system Clarity, a quiet rebuke to the mystical nonsense that had replaced rational thought at my former company. Over lunch with Ryan the next day, I presented a simple, elegant solution to Meridian's problems. No crystals, no energy fields, just robust, efficient technology designed by someone who understood their needs. This is remarkable, Ryan said, studying the performance metrics I'd shown him. How quickly could you implement this? 2 weeks for the basic framework, another 2 for full integration with your existing systems. I replied, I'd want to bring in a small team to ensure a smooth transition. Do you have a team? He asked. I smiled. Not yet, but I know exactly who to call. By the end of the week, I'd incorporated a new company, Lucentops, with a simple tagline, Precision over Perception. I reached out to key engineers from Cortava whom I trusted, starting with Zoe, the junior engineer who had warned me about my termination. She had quit Cortava 2 days after I left, unable to stomach the new regime. She joined me immediately, bringing with her 2 other talented developers who had also departed in the exodus of rational thinkers that apparently followed my removal. We set up operations in a small office space in downtown Denver. Nothing fancy but functional. No crystals, no water fountains, no smudging ceremonies, just computers, whiteboards, and people who understood technology. Our first project was the Meridian Systems implementation, which we delivered ahead of schedule and significantly under budget. Ryan was ecstatic with the results. Response times 40% faster than what they'd experienced even at Helix's peak performance. Predictive accuracy improved by 22% and not a single outage or unexplained glitch. I don't know how you did it, he told me during our post-implementation review. But this system makes Helix look like a prototype. Different priorities, I explained simply. We focus on performance and reliability, not energetic alignment. Ryan laughed. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And by the way, we're not the only ones looking for alternatives to Cortava right now. I've had calls from 3 other CTOs this week asking about our solution. I hope you don't mind that I've been singing your praises. I didn't mind at all. Within 3 months of establishing Lucentops, we had signed contracts with 5 former Cortava clients, all of whom had experienced similar issues with the transformed Helix system, now officially renamed the Moonflow Protocol, according to Cortava's redesigned website, which featured flowing circular graphics and crystal imagery prominently displayed on every page. We maintained a low profile, focusing on delivery rather than marketing. No press releases, no splashy launch parties, no social media campaigns. Just solid work that spoke for itself, spreading through word of mouth among technical leaders who valued results over rhetoric. 6 months after my departure from Cortava, I received another unexpected call, this time from Leonard Kwan, one of the venture capitalists who had provided significant funding to Cortava Logic in its early days. "Maya Reynolds," he said when I answered. "The woman everyone in tech is suddenly talking about." "I doubt that very much," I replied. "We've been keeping a pretty low profile." Which is exactly why people are talking. In an industry obsessed with hype, a company delivering exceptional results without any PR is noteworthy, especially when that company is systematically acquiring clients from a once promising startup that seems to be imploding. I didn't confirm or deny his assessment. "What can I do for you, Mr. Kwan?" "Leonard, please. And it's more what I might be able to do for you. I'm interested in learning more about Lucentops. Would you be open to a conversation about potential investment?" This was unexpected. We had been self-funding through client contracts, deliberately avoiding outside investment to maintain complete control. But a strategic partner with Leonard's connections could accelerate our growth significantly. "I'm open to a conversation," I said cautiously. "But I should be upfront that we're not looking to give up control of our direction or technical decisions." He chuckled. "After what I've observed at Cortava lately, I'd consider that a selling point, not a concern. How about dinner next week when I'm in Denver?" Over an excellent meal at one of Denver's top restaurants, Leonard asked insightful questions about our technology, our team, and our vision. Unlike many VCs I'd met, he actually understood the technical aspects of what we were building. No surprise given his background as a former engineer before moving into finance. "So," he said as we finished our main course, "what's your ultimate goal here, Maya? Are you building to sell, to go public eventually, or is this more of a statement?" I considered the question carefully. "It started as survival," I admitted. "I needed to prove, maybe just to myself, that what happened at Cortava wasn't about my abilities or the value of my work, but it's evolved into something more. We're building something genuinely better than what existed before. Something that prioritizes substance over style, results over rhetoric. If that's a statement, so be it." Leonard nodded thoughtfully. "You know, I was on Cortava's board until about 8 months ago. I stepped down when it became clear that Gavin was, let's say, heading in a direction I couldn't support. I tried to talk sense into him, but the crystals spoke louder," I suggested. He laughed. "Something like that. The sad thing is, Cortava had real potential. The core technology, your technology, was exceptional. To watch it being dismantled for the sake of someone's spiritual awakening is painful." "How bad is it?" I asked, unable to resist the question. I'd heard rumors from former colleagues, but nothing concrete in recent weeks. "Bad," he said simply. "They've lost nearly 40% of their client base. The system is increasingly unstable. Employees are leaving in droves. And Gavin?" He shook his head. "Gavin remains convinced that the transformation just needs more time and more investment in spiritual technology, whatever that means." "And Celine?" A grimace. "Still very much in charge, apparently. Last I heard, they've renovated an entire floor of the office into a digital meditation sanctuary, complete with crystal arrays aligned to optimize data flow. Meanwhile, actual data flow continues to deteriorate." I felt a complex mix of emotions: satisfaction that my assessment had been correct, sadness for the company I'd helped build, and concern for the colleagues who remained. "Here's my proposal," Leonard said, bringing the conversation back to business. "I'm prepared to invest $1.5 million in Lucentops for a 15% stake. No board seat, no operational control. Just capital to help you scale faster, and my network to help you connect with the right clients and potential team members. What do you think?" It was a generous offer, fair valuation, minimal strings attached. "I'll need to discuss it with my team," I said, "but personally, I'm interested." 2 days later, after thorough discussions with my core team, We accepted Leonard's offer. The capital allowed us to move to a larger office space, hire additional engineers, many from Cortava, and accelerate our product development roadmap. 8 months after my departure from Cortava, we launched our flagship product, a comprehensive system called Lucent Core that offered all the capabilities of the original Helix and more, with significantly improved performance, security, and usability. Within weeks, we had signed 10 new clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies that had never worked with Cortava. I hadn't been paying much attention to my former employer, focusing instead on building something new. But news eventually reached me through industry circles. Cortava Logic was in serious trouble. Their stock price had plummeted. They had laid off nearly half their staff, and rumors of bankruptcy were circulating. Then came the video. Someone, presumably a disgruntled employee, had recorded one of Celine's system healing ceremonies in the server room and leaked it online. The footage showed Celine, still barefoot but now adorned with even more crystals and flowing robes, leading Gavin and several uncomfortable-looking executives enchanting around the server racks while waving smoking bundles of herbs. The video went viral in tech circles, becoming an instant meme and case study in corporate delusion. 3 days after the video leaked, I received a call from Gavin. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Maya," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "I hope you're doing well." "I am," I replied neutrally. "What can I do for you, Gavin?" There was a long pause. "I think we need to talk, in person, if possible." "About what?" Another pause. "About the future of Cortava, and potentially your role in it." I almost laughed out loud. "My role? I'm not sure what role you think I could have at Cortava after being unceremoniously pushed out." "Things have changed," he said quietly. "Perspectives have evolved. The board has asked for significant leadership changes. Celine is no longer with the company." This was interesting. "And you're still CEO?" "For now," he admitted. "Conditionally. Part of those conditions involves reaching out to you." "To offer me my old job back, I guessed." "Something like that. We need you, Maya. The system is not functioning optimally." That was undoubtedly the understatement of the year. "And you think I can just come back and fix everything after what happened?" "I know it's complicated," he said. "But we've worked together for years before all this. For the sake of the company, the employees who are still there, would you at least meet with me and the board?" I considered refusing outright. Lucentops was thriving, growing faster than I had anticipated. I had nothing to prove and nothing to gain by helping Cortava recover from a crisis of their own making. But there were still people at Cortava I cared about, colleagues who hadn't had the opportunity or resources to leave. "I'll meet," I said finally, "but I make no promises beyond that." "That's all I'm asking," Gavin said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you, Maya." The meeting was scheduled for the following day at a neutral location, a private room at a downtown restaurant rather than Cortava's offices. When I arrived, I found Gavin looking noticeably thinner and more haggard than when I'd last seen him, along with 3 board members I recognized, including the chairperson, Eleanor Vasquez. "Ms. Reynolds," Eleanor began after initial greetings. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'll get straight to the point. Cortava Logic is in crisis. The technical issues with our core systems have reached a critical point. Multiple clients have terminated their contracts. Our stock price has fallen 68% in 6 months, and we're facing potential class action lawsuits from shareholders." I nodded but remained silent. "We believe you are the only person who truly understands the Helix system. Forgive me. The Moon Flow Protocol." She corrected herself with visible distaste. "We would like to bring you back as CTOs, with complete technical authority and a significant equity stake, to help us recover from this situation." I looked at Gavin, who was staring at the table, unable to meet my eyes. "And the current leadership team?" "There have been significant changes," Eleanor said diplomatically. "Ms. Maru's contract was terminated 2 weeks ago. Several other executives who supported her approach have also departed. Mr. Rowe's continuation as CEO is contingent upon successful stabilization of our core systems and client relationships. I see, I said. And you believe I can simply return and fix everything that's been broken over the past 8 months? We hope you can, she replied honestly. Or at least guide us in understanding what needs to be done. The alternative is likely bankruptcy and dissolution of the company. I took a moment to consider my response carefully. I appreciate your candor, and I'm genuinely sorry to see Cortava in this position. The company was my home for 14 years, and I still care about many people who work there. But I've moved on. I've built something new that reflects my values and vision. We understand, Eleanor said. We would be open to discussing an acquisition of Lucentops as part of this arrangement. Your team could join Cortava intact. I shook my head. That's not an option. Lucentops isn't for sale, especially not to Cortava. Then perhaps a strategic partnership, one of the other board members suggested. We could license your technology to replace the current system. That might be possible, I conceded. But it would require significant changes in how Cortava operates, complete transparency, contractual guarantees of technical autonomy, and personnel changes beyond what you've already made. What specifically are you asking for? Eleanor inquired. I looked directly at Gavin. A new CEO for starters. Someone with both technical understanding and business acumen. Someone who won't be swayed by the next spiritual advisor or management fad that comes along. Gavin finally met my gaze, his expression a mix of resignation and relief. I've already offered my resignation to the board, he said quietly, effective upon finding a suitable replacement. That surprised me. Perhaps he had gained some self-awareness after all. There's something else you should know, I said, deciding to be completely transparent. The issues you're experiencing with your system aren't just the result of poor management or misguided changes. When I left Cortava, I activated a continuity protocol that migrated certain core components of Helix to a secure external server. The room fell silent as they processed this information. You took our system? One of the board members finally asked, his tone incredulous. No, I corrected. I secured a copy of the system I built, using protocols that were documented and approved years ago as disaster recovery measures. The original remains at Cortava, but without certain key components that make it truly exceptional. It's like having a car with a functioning engine but missing the computer that optimizes its performance. That sounds like intellectual property theft, the same board member said, a note of anger entering his voice. Eleanor held up her hand to silence him. The continuity protocols Ms. Reynolds mentions were indeed documented and approved by previous technical leadership. They were designed to protect the system from catastrophic failure or compromise. Whether this particular use was within the intended scope is a complex legal question that wouldn't benefit anyone to pursue right now. She turned to me. Can these components be restored? Yes, I confirmed, but only under the right conditions. Which would be a complete leadership reset, a technical governance structure that prevents non-technical influences from compromising system integrity, and a formal apology to every employee who was marginalized, demoted, or pushed out for questioning the moon flow direction. Eleanor considered this for a moment, then nodded. Those terms are acceptable to the board. We're prepared to make whatever changes necessary to save the company. Then we have something to work with. I said, I won't return to Cortava as an employee, but Lucentops would consider a consulting arrangement to help restore system functionality and train a new technical team. By the end of the meeting, we had outlined the framework for an agreement. Lucentops would provide technical consulting to Cortava for a period of 6 months, helping to restore Helix to its former capabilities and establish proper governance processes. In return, Cortava would pay a substantial consulting fee and issue a public statement acknowledging the contributions of former technical staff, particularly those who had departed during this transformation period. As we wrapped up, Gavin asked if he could speak with me privately for a moment. The others left. and we sat in silence for a few seconds. I owe you an apology, Maya, he finally said, a massive one. I got lost, caught up in something I thought was visionary but was just delusion. What happened, Gavin? I asked, genuinely curious. You were always focused on results, on building something substantial. How did you go from that to crystals and moon cycles? He ran a hand through his hair, which I noticed had considerably more gray than 8 months ago. Midlife crisis, maybe. I was at a CEO retreat in Sedona, feeling burned out, questioning what it all meant. Celine was the wellness coach assigned to our group, and she seemed to have answers I was looking for. A way to make business feel meaningful beyond just profit and growth. He shook his head. It sounds so ridiculous now. It wasn't ridiculous to want meaning, I said, surprising myself with the empathy I felt. Just the way you went about it. The worst part is how I treated you, he continued. Someone who had been loyal, brilliant, essential to everything we built. I dismissed 14 years of contribution because someone told me your energy signature was wrong. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I'm truly sorry. Maya. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that. I nodded, acknowledging his apology without immediately accepting it. What will you do now? A small, sad smile. Take some time off. Real time off, not a spiritual retreat. Reconnect with reality. Maybe eventually find a small company that needs an experienced advisor, not a CEO. He hesitated, then added, I've learned my lesson about what kind of decisions I should and shouldn't make. As I left the meeting, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. The anger and betrayal that had driven me for months had served their purpose. They had fueled the creation of something new and better. Now, I could let them go. 3 weeks later, Cortava Logic issued a public statement announcing a return to core technical values and a leadership restructuring. Gavin's departure was framed as a mutual decision, and a new CEO was appointed, a veteran technology executive with a solid technical background and a reputation for steady, rational leadership. The statement included a section acknowledging the invaluable contributions of past technical team members whose vision and expertise built the foundation of Cortava's success, and explicitly apologized to those whose concerns about recent directional changes were not adequately heard. More importantly, it announced a technical consulting partnership with Lucentops to enhance and optimize Cortava's core systems. I didn't participate in the press surrounding these announcements. I didn't need to claim public victory or humiliate those who had wronged me. Instead, I focused on building Lucentops into the company I'd always envisioned, one where technical excellence was valued above all, where decisions were based on evidence rather than trends, and where every team member's contribution was recognized and respected. 6 months after our consulting arrangement with Cortava began, their systems were stable again, their client retention had improved, and their stock price had begun to recover. Our contract completed. Lucentops moved on to new challenges and opportunities. Occasionally, I would receive messages from former Cortava colleagues who had stayed through the turbulence. The crystals had been removed from the office, they reported. The digital meditation sanctuary had been converted back to functional workspace. The system had been quietly renamed back to Helix, though with a new visual identity that maintained some of the more aesthetic and less functionally problematic elements of the redesign. I never heard from Celine again, though I occasionally spotted her name associated with wellness retreats for executives. Apparently, she had found a new niche helping burned-out CEOs find meaning through spiritual practices, a perfectly reasonable pursuit when not confused with technical system management. A year after my departure from Cortava, Lucentops had grown to a team of 42 exceptional engineers and data scientists. We had moved to a beautiful new office space in downtown Denver, open, modern, and practical. No crystals, no water fountains, no sage burning. though I did keep one small purple crystal paperweight on my desk as a reminder of how quickly rationality can be overtaken by delusion when people lose sight of what really matters. On the anniversary of my last day at Cortava, I stayed late at the office, alone with my thoughts and the quiet hum of servers. I opened my laptop and checked our system dashboard. 100% uptime. Zero predictive errors. Client satisfaction at an all-time high. I hadn't destroyed anything in the end. I had simply taken the essence of what I had built, not the code or the data, but the knowledge, the vision, the understanding of what technology could and should be, and given it a new home where it could thrive. Some might call what I did revenge. I prefer to think of it as restoration, taking back the value that was always mine and placing it where it belonged. In the process, I had created something better than what had existed before, something built on a foundation of genuine expertise rather than fashionable nonsense. I closed my laptop and gazed out at the Denver skyline, lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. 14 years of work had brought me here, not where I had expected to be, but exactly where I needed to be. The journey hadn't been linear or predictable, but then, the most important ones rarely are. In the end, it wasn't about the system or the data or even the company. It was about knowing your own worth and refusing to let others diminish it. It was about creating something of genuine value and protecting it from those who would destroy it through ignorance or delusion. And sometimes that means taking the essence of what you've built and carrying it forward into something new, something even better than what came before. As for the $65 million system and 14 years of data, they weren't really gone. They had simply evolved, transformed into something stronger, more resilient, much like their creator.